Hello, coaches. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Better Spotlight. My name is Kim Cafino, and my goal is to help you coach better. After decades as a teacher and coach in international schools, I founded my company, Eduro Learning, to help you embrace your inner leader and make a bigger impact in your school setting as a teacher, a coach, or a leader. I work with clients around the world through our certificate programs and private mentoring packages, and these episodes usually feature some guests from those programs. If you have a topic you'd like to hear us talk about, please leave a comment below, join our Coach Better Facebook group, or find us on social media at Eduro Learning. Today, I'm chatting with a fantastic panel of coaches. In fact, they're all my clients. They've all made the transition to coaching from a classroom role over the past few years. I am so excited to share this episode with you because it is such a pleasure to work with these amazing coaches in the Coach Certificate Mentorship Program and in my private mentoring programs. They are doing outstanding work in their school communities, and I am so proud to be sharing their voices here. This Spotlight episode focuses on the surprises that they all faced as they moved into their coaching roles. In the full-length podcast episode, we discuss everything from recognizing your own self-belief and competency as a coach, to hidden surprises in moving into a coaching role, to managing the changing relationships with your colleagues, and navigating complicated conversations with your school leaders. To listen to the full episode, subscribe to Coach Better wherever you get your podcasts. So my first kind of big question is, what surprised you when you first moved into the coaching role? And maybe take that in whatever context feels right for you, given your unique school setting. So what is something surprising about coaching? It could be something unexpectedly good or something unexpectedly challenging, something that you generally didn't expect. And how did you kind of work through that thing? And I will kind of go backwards. The way we just went. So Becca, Sasha, Paula, Yariv, and maybe we'll dig into each of your stories as we go, but that's just kind of the flow of the next part of this conversation. So Becca, start us off and tell us what surprised you when you first moved into this coaching role this year, maybe in a good way, maybe in a challenging way, whatever strikes your fancy, or both is fine too.
Okay, so what surprised me moving into this role was when I left my classroom, I felt super confident in what I was doing. I knew that I was a leader. I was one of our building tech coordinators, working with teachers essentially in a coaching type role. So it's like, great, I'm going to get into this and it's going to be a really easy year. I was taking the place of another coach who was also very passionate about ELA. I was like, perfect, I can just jump right into her kind of path that she was taking and run with it. And that was not the case, which was super surprising because I came into the start of the year and I've worked with a lot of our elementary teachers. I've got great relationships already, but I didn't realize I was going to have to rebrand myself. So instead of them seeing me as the teacher and the tech coordinator, I now had to rethink those relationships, not really rethink them, but mold them again to work with the teachers as an instructional coach. And even though I had some of those previous relationships, because I was no longer housed in a building, but housed in our administration office, some of our teachers saw had a different view because of where my office is. So really having to work through that challenge with some of the teachers. And then also having conversations with the teachers and going, I'm on your side, I'm in the boat with you. And having a teacher turn around and say, you know what, Becca, you may be in the boat, but we're in the submarine. So really having to work with those teachers and go, okay, I may not be deep in those trenches with you in your mind, but I'm going to get in there alongside of you. And that was really shocking to think through, as that was not something that I thought that I would hear from the teachers that I was working with. But thankfully, all of my time working with Kim through the coach kind of accelerated my process and my journey of growth from losing my confidence at the beginning of the year to really feeling more confident now in this role and diving in headfirst with everything that I want to do with our teachers.
Okay, so you just hit on like a million things. I want to see if maybe, and I want to give everyone a chance to talk. So if you don't want to respond to this, I totally get it. It's okay that other people can say other things. But the things that really stood out to me as you were talking is this moving from a teaching role into a coaching role. You're usually coming into it because you developed what I would call leadership skills, like teacher leader skills in your teaching position. And you're viewed as someone that teachers want to work with, and you're someone who has something to share. And that is easy and natural when you're a peer. But then as soon as you move into a coaching role, Becca, you articulated it perfectly. The perception of who you are, even if it's with the exact same teachers you've been working with for you for the last 8 years, the perception shifts. And suddenly you're in the admin office, or you're the person who meets with admin regularly, or you're the person who leads, whole school meetings. And that's a layer of responsibility, a layer of leadership in a coaching position, that because you are still like positionally just a teacher, coaches aren't always prepared for. And you just articulated that perfectly. And so I don't know if others are going to share that same sentiment, but for me, that really stood out. And that's like been a light bulb moment I've been having, even though my transition to coaching was a long time ago. I'm like, oh, that's why that was so hard. Like, why has it taken me 15 years to realize that? But now it's like, oh, that's a thing. That's a thing we can be prepared for if we know it's coming. So I have Sasha next on my list of people to talk. And Sasha, if you're ready, please go right ahead. And if anybody else has something to say either about that or to answer that question, that's great too. But I'll start with Sasha.
Yeah, I can relate to what Rebecca is saying, because suddenly, because you're in this position, people or your colleagues begin to think of you as having a kind of power that you really don't have, that evaluative power. And so people sometimes feel like not quite sure what to make of you. Are you on our side really, or are you now in a position of power to dictate to us? And so it really is important to think about how you're going to recalibrate those relationships that existed and were pretty great relationships before in many cases. And it took me a while to realize that. And I think one of the things that helped me is helping me, and I still have to do it, is to be able to say to teachers that I'm not evaluative in my position. Being willing to stand alongside them, plan alongside them, be in that classroom with them, and to hear some of the struggles that they're having with as much empathy and as much grace as I can. Those are things that help me to help them to see that we're in this together. Whatever we do is not something that I'm going to use against you. Let's just show up together and be partners in the process. A thing that really surprised me was that not everybody wants to be coached. And I couldn't fathom that, because it was something that I was hop, skipping and jumping after. And it's something that I always feel like it's the greatest thing. Why would I not want to have a coach? But there are lots of teachers who don't feel that need. And so in my first year, even into my second year, I struggled to understand, why don't people want to be coached? Is it me? What am I doing wrong? Why wouldn't you want to be coached? And I just couldn't see past that. And in many conversations with Kim, with other coaches on my team, coaches that I met along the way, I just couldn't fathom, no matter what anybody said to me, I just couldn't get it in my head. Not everybody wants to be coached. And finally, I've begun to understand that. And again, it's the idea of being patient And that's not something that comes naturally to me. I'm not patient. I want things to happen like this. I want the instant gratification. And so I'm able to understand that better than before, that, people are at different places. What I have to offer as a coach might not be the thing that you need in particular. And so work with the people who are willing to work with you, build those relationships with the people who aren't ready yet, and just keep going. Because now I have less of a difficulty getting people to work with me. Would I love to work with more people? Sure. And some of the people who I never thought I could work with, I've had an opportunity to work with them and to enroll them in a coaching conversation, or coaching relationship. But yeah, that's what surprised me. Not everybody wants to be coached.
Oh my gosh. Also, you nailed it. The not everybody wants to be coached was another like shock that I remember having when I was new to coaching too. And like this, I think you really hit the nail on the head, is that not everybody's ready yet. And it doesn't mean they don't want to be coached. They're just not ready right now. And that doesn't mean anything about you, and it doesn't mean anything about them. It just means right now that match just isn't there, and that's okay. But because most people who go into coaching go into it because they're so passionate about it and they think it's so wonderful, to have teachers who may have been willing to like partner with you as peers on the same team, teaching the same grade level, then be not super interested in being coached is like, what changed? It's hard to understand that dynamic change. So I think that's a really interesting point about being patient and building those relationships and recognizing that your pace isn't the same as everybody else's pace, and that's okay. It's not a reflection on anything other than people's readiness level.
Can I add?
Yes, of course.
I think and I was thinking about Becca at first, but then Sasha, I think the same thing might apply, is when I am working and presenting myself as leader, right? Like when I am speaking to the whole staff and it's a 50-minute meeting, I've got them for 50 minutes. I let them know I'm taking a chance. Like I'm being a risk taker, just like one of your students, right? Like I almost like I want you to be when we do work together. So I'm always putting myself out there. Like, I don't know. And Sasha, you said this, I'm taking your words. Like, we don't know what we're doing sometimes, right? So I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm putting, sorry, not that I don't know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, but I might be making a mistake. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm trying something. I'm putting myself out there. So I think letting them know how vulnerable we are reminds them that, yeah, I might have this position where, okay, I'm holding this whole staff meeting now, but I'm really doing what you do in your class every day, right? How is this any different than what you do with your kids daily, multiple times a day? And I think it's okay to remind them of that. And it's a little awkward in the beginning. I tell them how awkward it might be for me to be presenting, but I'm doing it. And then I go right into my, I feel comfortable with, because I've planned it and I've rehearsed it probably like 7 or 8 times. So it comes out really smooth, but I think that helps, is reminding them of that we're all just trying our best and we might make mistakes, but I think it brings them in a little bit more to buy in and then ask for that opportunity to work together.
Do you have any other surprises, Yariv, while you're on the hot mic? Do you have any other surprises or challenges that you experienced in your transition to coaching, whether it was like your first year as a coach or transitioning in a new role, or even, I know that at the school that you're at now, there's been like a little bit of a transition of what your role is. Anything that surprised you either in a great way or in a way that was like unexpectedly challenging?
I think it's, the most surprising thing is just when I feel like there's no hope and I don't know how I could get more people to buy in, those opportunities present themselves. And it comes through, like Sasha said, being patient. I've joined the year 7 and year 8 teams, and my principal at first asked me, well, why would you want to be in those teams? And I thought, well, I'm on the ground. I get to hear what's happening in the classrooms. I can also participate and share. But what also comes out of it, and it just happened this last week, we're trying to integrate digital citizenship into the classes. Currently at my school, digital citizenship happens in 6 standalone lessons. The students leave math class or leave science, whatever the core subject is, and they come 6 times a year for digital citizenship. And they all know, okay, not a core class, not showing up on a report card. My parents barely even know that I'm taking a digital citizenship course. That's if they read the once every 3-month newsletter from their head of year. They all feel that. So I thought, how can we integrate this into classrooms? And my 4th year on the team, on both teams, I shared with teachers my struggle and just shared a plan on how I think it could work within the classrooms. And they bought in. And it was only year 7, the grade 6, they bought in. And that for me is my biggest moment of the year. And I know, Kim, this happened after our last meeting, but huge. These teachers bought in. And so when I told my principal, I said, hey, Christine, this happened and I'm so excited about it. And she's like, oh, I'm so proud of you. And I said, yeah, thank you. But it's all because you like let me be on that team. It's all because I've asked to be on that team. It's all because being a part of that team, being with the teachers. So I think the biggest surprise is just all these opportunities come sometimes, all my planning. And yeah, Kim, all the planning that you and I did for the last 12 months, we never saw that, oh yeah, that seed that was planted grew and my greatest success of the year. So I think that's the biggest surprise is opportunities are everywhere. Just be open to them, I guess.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think that idea of like planting the seeds and not knowing where things might come from and being open to that is a really wonderful way to think about that, because you do have to plant a lot of seeds when you're coaching, right? Like that's another kind of, maybe it's a surprise that you don't know, like you're saying, Yariv, you didn't know, you couldn't have ever anticipated this amazing success, but you were actively planting all those seeds and that's what kind of allowed it to grow.
I totally just, I really, my plan was I would join and then see, oh, I can work with the math teacher because I heard you were going to do something and try to like squeeze my way in. And I was hopeful. And yeah, that can still happen. There's nothing, I don't mean to make it seem like there's anything wrong with that. That's great. Any chance. But that's how small I thought the plant would grow. And instead, this is like a garden, right? I have 7 teachers who have bought in to teach these 6 lessons because 2 are going to share it. And it's just amazing. And now let's see the impact on the kids, right? Because the kids are going to see it happening. Oh, I'm learning about digital citizenship and what it means to have balance, or what it means to give citations or find incredible news, whatever it might be. It's happening within the classes and the teachers coming back to it over and over again. And all the teachers are going to come back to it. So talk about impact, right? Like that's amazing.
And that's even a nice like surprise that you can have a level of impact on a whole grade level or a whole department, or even like Becca was talking about, a whole division, and see that like K12, I think sometimes even moving into a coaching role, that might be something you don't think about kind of before you get into the position. And then once you're there, like, oh, like Yariv is talking about being on the year 7 team. And now you have all these year 7 teachers contributing to something that is going to make such a meaningful impact at school. So that is super exciting. Paula, do you want to share anything that was surprising to you? And I know you've been in a slightly different position than the others on the call, so take it in the context, however it works for you. Could even be thinking about how just kind of trying to peer coach people, what has emerged for you in terms of being in that chair position and working with individuals without a formal coaching structure. What emerged for you in your position? But take it in whatever direction feels right for you.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I think what resonated with me with many of what you said was with Becca, when you mentioned the submarine. Like, I think this year my school was just going through a lot of change. So regardless of where you were, we were all in the submarine. So at the beginning of the school year, like what Kim, we were trying to build this thing that made sense, from the leadership to the teachers. So, and in my mind, it had to be a certain way for it to work. Like I wanted all of the ducks in a row, and then it somehow imploded because of all these changes. And I said, okay, well, I guess I have to shelve coaching in the way we thought it would be, like perfect, because we were trying to do it right? Like winning the leadership first and having them make sure to advocate. Anyway, to make a long story short, what surprised me was it didn't have to look a certain way and it didn't have to be perfect. If you were in the submarine with the teachers, you already have the shared experience, whatever adversity that is because of change. Change management is so hard. So two things worked. One was we were all going through this, the hardship together, so that we just instantly trusted each other. And we didn't have that when I was coming in as the person who was going to build the program, right? The psychological safety with my peers came from the fact that we were all going through these changes together. So like what Yariv said was like opportunities everywhere, right? It doesn't have to look a certain way if you're just with teachers and you build that trust and you're vulnerable with them. And again, what Sasha said about like, it's so clear that I want to be coached. Like I love coach me, like, so even if I'm coming in like chair with positional power, I guess the only strategic thing I did was like reach out to other chairs. So help. And then anytime someone said like, hey, I'm really hungry for PD, even if they looked at me as chair, I just turned everything into a coaching conversation. And then that just spread, like that seed or virus, whatever, whatever metaphor, it spread, and then the news spread. And then people just were like, hey, Pao, can you help me with this? Or I heard you did this. So I guess to make a long story short, when we were trying to make a perfect program, trying to like make sure all the obstacles were out of the way, when the biggest obstacle came up, which was like, you cannot coach, we're not doing it this year, I still got to coach, right? And it has everything to do with being on the ground with his teachers, right? I didn't need to convince them. It was a tough year. And then just saying, like what Sasha said, as a human, as a teacher, as an educator, I love growing with teachers. I love building capacity, because like nervous system to nervous system, we know that if we do this together, like we'll both grow. And then from there, just trusting it. So that was the biggest surprise. It doesn't have to be perfect or the most organized thing if people shared experience, equanimity, like all those things. Like eventually the people who know you and begin to trust you because you are willing to be authentic and vulnerable, it can be a coaching conversation because it's about growth and kids.
You raised such a good point, Paula. And I think what's interesting, especially on this call, is that we have schools in very different phases of their coaching program adoption. And like your school was doing it and now they're not doing it. And so you're now working with that groundswell. And so you're building up the interest in coaching through those kind of peer relationships. Whereas Ashley came into the position in a school that Becca came into the position in a school that is already established and has had coaching for several years. And so like looking at the ways that you navigate those relationships based on where the school structure is at, to me, is really interesting. And I think your point, Paula, really hits in all of those, no matter what level of formality your coaching program is, like your point that it doesn't have to be perfect. That really resonates with me, because this year's group of coaches inside the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program, you guys were all like super type A, like ambitious, wanting everything to be exactly right. And I kept having to say, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I needed to go through the program for this new cohort coming in and make sure that it's very clear that each school is its unique context. Each school is having a different school year, like especially in the last 3 years, each school is in a different place. You cannot expect to open a coaching textbook and be like, okay, tick, tick, tick. That is just not going to happen. So recognizing that you have the situation you have and being flexible and adaptable and vulnerable and focusing on those relationships is the way that you can move forward no matter where you are. Even if, like Paula, you had at the beginning of the year, you were hoping for this, and at the end of the year, you ended up with this. There's nothing wrong with that you're going from where everyone is at based on the context that you're in. Which does go Paula.
Yes, because I think when it had to be perfect, it actually silenced me. Like I just was so nervous to get it wrong, or or I better walk in there knowing what like a coaching cycle will look like, and it people have to know what to expect. And I think it's because I came from another school that had a very robust coaching culture, and what I was trying to do, I thought not that it was similar where I was, but we were trying to get it right from the beginning so we wouldn't not commit the same mistakes, but not face the same obstacles. But then, because it's a completely different context. And I also just arrived. They didn't know me. I had no authority. I had nothing. I had to still build my ethos, right? I had no credibility. And it took a year and kind of this shift in the school year. And even losing we're going to build a coaching program. It was like asking Neo if he was the one. And then the oracle had to say, you're not. For him to become the one. I'm not Neo. I'm not the one. But you know what I mean? Anyway.
Absolutely. And I think that experience of feeling the pressure of being perfect probably happens to a lot of us. Like, I think that is probably quite relatable to everyone on the call, and feeling like you're the representation of coaching to the staff. And if you get it wrong, then they're going to not like coaching. And especially, I don't know if anyone specifically said this, but I think it kind of came up in different ways. If teachers have had experiences with coaches that were not positive, then those also get kind of transferred to you. And so you have to also do the work of overcoming any baggage that there might be, whether it's at the whole school level. I think Sasha talked about that I'm not going to be evaluating you. And wherever that perception comes from, that coaches are evaluatory, it could be at this school, it could have been at previous schools, but there's that baggage of this is what coaching is. And we have to unpack all of that. So not only feeling like you have to do right by the position to make it be what you want it to be, but then also people having preconceived notions of what it is, and you having to kind of uncover what that is and help move forward in a positive way. I mean, there's a lot of layers there that are really complicated. Hey there. Is a coaching position in your future? Are you recruiting this year for a coaching role? Join us for the next cohort of the Coach Certificate and Mentorship Program. You'll learn everything you need to be successful as a K12 Instructional Coach, with an entire academic year of curated coaching content, plus the support of a mentor to adapt your learning to exactly your needs and experience level for the entire program. Inside our private community, you'll also learn with a global cohort of coaches from international public and private schools around the world, so you can see how coaching really works in practice and build your network of coaches. Our global cohorts open only once a year, and registration for this year's cohort opens soon. So get all the details for our next cohort at edurolearning.com/coach. At Eduro Learning, teachers become leaders. Whatever your role in schools, you are so much more than just a teacher. As an educator, you have built an amazing skill set that goes far beyond the classroom, and you deserve professional learning that does more than just tick a box. It's time to end that cycle of one-size-fits-all, barely there, minimum PD, and get professional learning that's customized just for you. Join us for one of our annual global cohorts of The Coach, Women Who Lead, or Coattail to see how our community-driven, personalized certificate programs will help you build the confidence to embrace your inner leader to make a bigger impact in your school setting. You deserve to be at the heart of your professional learning experiences. If you prefer to get started with something right now, we've also got self-paced courses where you can earn recertification credits, private mentoring packages that we can customize just for you, and downloadable workbooks you can jump into right away. Find it all at edurolearning.com. Plus, join our Coach Better Facebook group and connect with us on social media for more great resources at the intersection of technology, coaching, and leadership. I'd love to hear from you, no matter where you're at in your professional journey, to see how I can help you move forward. Send me a DM and let's start a conversation. See you next time.